So, your Harley Softail won't start. Wonder why that is. Catch you inside. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. Hope you're enjoying the channel and the videos. Please like, share, subscribe, leave loads of comments below and check out the website RevelatorAlf.com. So in this video, I wanted to talk about general engine starting problems with your Harley Softail, with your Sport Glide as I'm riding now. Now, one of the things that I've been looking at quite a lot recently is reported incidents of mechanical failures, electrical failures from dealerships, but also from Harley themselves. Now, in the owner's manual, yes, on page 177, there is troubleshooting pages, which is actually quite interesting, because if you go, let's say, on Harley forums, for example, a lot of people go on there asking the questions and the answers are already here. Marry the information here with a service manual and there's some slight differences. So let's just talk about with your engine. So if it fails to turn over when you actually press the start switch, you know, you've pressed the switch to run and then you go to hit the starter, nothing. Well, there could be a lot of reasons for this. First of all, it could just be purely electrical. The amount of times that I've had bikes that have had electrical issues, they failed to start, you would not believe. I've built bikes and I've been scratching my head for weeks trying to get something to start or trying to get something to fire up. And it turns out to be a loose wire, a bad earth somewhere, and then that's it. It just throws everything out. So the reason why your bike might not be starting could be purely electrical. It could be a flat battery, it could be a poor battery, it could be a poor battery terminal connection, it could be a fuse, a blown fuse. It could be the run switch that is not engaging properly, making a good contact. It could be the starter switch itself that's not making a good connection as well. These are quite simple issues. It could be a bad connection at the switch. It could be a bad connection at the solenoid. It could be a bad connection at the actual starter itself. So that there's lots of electrical components or electrical areas that might make your engine not turn over when you hit the button. So the service manual here says exactly the same thing. The engine run switch is not in the off position, or is in the off position. Well, you're trying to hit the starter, but it's in the off position. Seems ludicrous, but so many people try and do that. It's discharged battery, loose or corroded connections, even the solenoid chatters as well. The starter control circuit is faulty. The actual circuitry itself, there could be an issue. The electric starter shaft pinion gear not engaging, or overrunning clutch is slipping. Okay, so that's a problem with the actual starter itself. The bank angle sensor is tripped and the ignition has not been recycled to off, then back to run, and you've waited 5 seconds. Let's say you tip over your bike for whatever reason, it falls over. That bank angle sensor will stop it from starting again, so you have to pick the bike back upright, turn the switch, the run switch to off, then back on, wait 5 or 6 seconds, and then it should all reset, and then you should be away to go. Something wrong with the alarm. You know, the alarm is actually having an issue. It's been activated for whatever reason and it's not letting you fire up the bike. The motorcycle is in gear and the clutch is not pulled in, so that's also an issue. The jiffy stand, or the kickstand, the side stand, is down as well. Check my other video for that, you know, with a jiffy stand, how that works and everything. But that will stop your bike from, you know, starting. And actually, it will cut the engine out as well if as soon as you try and put it into gear. And as I said, the main fuse is either blown or it's just not there for whatever reason. I mean, you would imagine it should be there, but it's just not there. So there could be lots of different issues why your bike doesn't actually start. It doesn't actually turn over when you go and press the button. Most likely If there's no sound from the starter motor, this is purely an electrical issue, nothing else. It's not mechanical. This is going to be electrical. It's going to be battery, it's going to be switches, connections, either on the handlebars, on the switchgear, or the starter itself, or it's just a duff starter. So this is one of the things that you need to factor in if you have this kind of issue, and this is the kind of information that you want to relay to your mechanic, your Harley dealership, if you're going there for whatever reason, describing the symptoms. I have a job where I'm constantly referring or talking to engineers and talking about fault diagnosis, and the way they diagnose faults on the machines that I operate, for example, heavily relies upon the information that I'm giving them as well, and how I'm describing an event. So, you know, if I'm giving them duff information, that can lead them down a different path. I can also waste a lot of time as well in finding the fault and fixing it. It's exactly the same here. The more information, the more accurate information that you can give over to an engineer or to a mechanic will help them to find the fault. But also, if you're working on your bike as well, you can narrow it down to a particular issue as well. Okay, let's just move this on a little bit, and I just talk about if the engine turns over but doesn't start. So in other words, you've got electrical power from the battery to this switchgear to the starter, so that bit works. So the next bit is, well, is it fuel starvation issue? Do you have enough fuel in there? So many times, you know, people will try and start a bike and it wouldn't start, or it's bad fuel, or for whatever reason, if the bike's been stood still a long time. The service manual actually says that if you've got less than a US gallon, 3.79 litres in the fuel tank, you might have this issue. Which, no, I'm not so sure about that. You know, in the actual, in the owner's manual, it just says the fuel tank is empty. Yeah, the fuel tank is empty, that would ring true. But you still got a US gallon in there? I'm not so sure about that. But there you go. I mean, obviously these guys know. I think they, you know, they're being very conservative with that. The fouled spark plugs, if you've got fouled spark plugs, yeah, if you've got duff spark plugs, foul spark plugs, whatever reason, that's obviously going to, you know, stop your bang in those cylinders, isn't it? You've got a discharged battery. We've already talked about that. That could be one of the reasons that the electrical circuit to the spark plugs isn't working either. The engine lubricant, you know, the oiling is too heavy. It's winter, you know. The battery is suffering. The engine is harder to turn over. You know, the oil is too thick. You know, all that kind of stuff. And they're actually saying here, in cold weather conditions, winter conditions, make sure that the clutch is disengaged. You don't want to be engaged in the clutch and having to drive gears and all that kind of stuff as well. It could be spark plug cables. You know, it could be anything that affects the firing of those spark plugs. It could be anything else. Cable connections, loose, or cables connected to incorrect cylinders. Crikey, the amount of times over the years that we tried to start engines and it's just been a duff error that you've actually connecting the wrong HT lead to the different cylinder, the different spark plug. So, and then you kind of go, oh no, it's not that one, it's that one, and then eventually you work it out. So there's a damaged wire, loose wiring at the ignition coil, the battery, the ECM connector, the engine control module, of course. The ignition timing is incorrect due to a faulty ignition coil, ECM, or sensors. You know, you might have had some work done to the bike for whatever reason. You might have had a stage 1, stage 2, whatever. That might have affected a few things. There might be some errors within the ECM, the mapping, for whatever reason. The relationship between fuel, air, and timing of combustion, ignition, there's an issue there. So that could be the reason why it's not starting. It's turning over, it's just not firing. You got fuel filter, you got fuel filter blockage, fuel filter, you know, whatever reason. This comes down to fuel starvation, right? Sticking or damaged valves, or wrong length push rods. Look, if you've got something going on in the top end of the engine, in terms of valves or whatever, if the valves aren't seating properly or they're not opening and closing at the right time, then basically you're going to have incorrect compression of gases, let's say, and you're going to have incorrect discharge or exhausting of gases as well. That's going to affect everything. If everything is going off at the wrong time, and that's caused by poor valves, so on and so forth, that's going to cause the issue. And then you've got, obviously fuel injection system. You've got fouling fuel injectors or blocked fuel injectors, whatever. That could be another issue. So there's lots of reasons why that engine won't start after you've hit the starter. It could be a combination of things, and it comes down to fault diagnosis. Could be something really simple, could be something more sinister. So that's where this fact finding, this fault diagnosis comes into it. Okay, let's say the engine starts, but it starts hard. And it actually says here in the owner's manual, and it's also in the service manual as well. So let's just go find the owner's manual. Okay, this will be a look at it as well. You see the spark plugs are in bad condition. Well, yes, anytime you've got bad conditions and they're not working properly, that's going to affect it as well. It's got an improper gap or partially fouled. So if the gapping isn't right, or why would it be fouled? You either got a lean or rich mixture. For whatever reason, that mixture isn't quite right. That's why you're getting fouled spark plugs. The cables are in a bad condition. For whatever reason, your HT leads, as we would call them. Bad battery again. That's one of the reason. The loose wire or cable connection, one of the battery terminals or the coil. Again, loose connections. It's all very basic stuff when you get down to it. Again, cold weather, engine starting, the oil is too heavy, that kind of thing. The fuel tank vent plugged or fuel line is closed off, restricting fuel flow. Fuel starvation again. You've got partial fuel flow. That would start it. Water or dirt is in the fuel system or filter. Now, this is an interesting thing. This is kind of relates back to, well, why would you have water in your fuel system? It's a fuel tank, right? It's a petrol tank. One of the issues that you may have, let's say if you're leaving your bike for a long period of time, let's say over winter for whatever reason, and you leave your bike, let's say with an empty tank or a half empty tank. Well, what that means is that you've got, fuel, half of the tank or quarter of the tank, and the rest of that is going to be a mixture of air and fuel vapor, and obviously air and moisture. Moisture within that, any kind of moisture within that can condense over time. So what can happen is over a period of time, you can get water droplets that will obviously sink to the bottom of the fuel tank. And then if you've left it over a period of time, you'll have more and more that will go into the fuel tank. You can have venting as well on the tank as well, but obviously moisture can still get in there. So that's why you can get water. Obviously, if you've got contamination within the tank as well, that can affect everything. And then obviously if you've got, a fuel delivery issue, if you've got the pumping issue for whatever reason, why isn't the fuel getting from the fuel tank to the engine, let's say? Is it a delivery issue? Is it a quality issue? All these things you've got to consider. That's a reason why you got a hard starting engine. And pretty much the service manual says exactly the same thing. It's got a couple of extra things. The ignition not functioning properly is a possible sensor failure. This is saying here. The faulty ignition coil. That's obviously it's all to do with fuel air mixture and how it bangs as well. The valves, sticking valves again. And then we got a partially plugged fuel injector. So again, fault diagnosis, seeing what is actually the issue. So the next issue is the engine starts, but runs irregularly, or it misfires. Okay, so service manual here, again, it comes down to you know, fuel. It comes down to electrical as well. Spark plugs in poor condition or partially fouled. Yeah, that happens. The HD cables or the spark plug cables in poor condition, shorting out. Spark plug gap is too close or too wide. You know, it's just it's not set correctly. Faulty ignition coil, ECM, the control module, engine control module, or the sensor. There might be an issue there somewhere. The battery, you know, discharged battery, a bad battery for whatever reason. Loose connection, wires connection, broken wires, whatever. The ignition coil, battery, ECM connector. Intermittent short circuit due to damaged wire insulation. So, you know, if you've got rubbing wires for whatever reason, over a period of time, you wouldn't expect this on a brand new bike, of course, or a new bike, but over, you know, older bikes, definitely that might be an issue. Water or dirt in the fuel system, we've already talked about that. Fuel tank vent system plugged. Now, obviously, if you've got a fuel tank, for example, you're going to have a venting system to allow the flow of fuel to be correct. If otherwise, you'll have a vacuum developing within the tank as soon as fuel starts to come out of the tank, and it actually won't flow. So you need to have air going into it, and that's via a vent. And that vent, if it's blocked for whatever reason, will stop the fuel getting into there. There could be, I say, a very simple reason why it's blocked. Just clean it out, and you'll be good to go. There's an air leak at the intake manifold or air cleaner. Okay, yeah, so there's issues there. Loose or dirty ECM connector. Again, you know, loose wiring, dirty connections, that kind of thing. Faulty sensors, temperature manifold, absolute pressure, TMAP, the crank position, CKP, or the O2 sensor. Check out my other videos when I talked about stage 1 and O2 sensors. There have been reports of crank position sensors failing, and there have been also reports of TMAP sensors failing as well. So, you know, whilst I'm not saying it could be those have failed, that could be one of the reasons why. Incorrect valve timing, we've already talked about that. Weak or damaged valve springs, again, this is all to do with opening and closing valves. If the right amount of gas, fuel air mix is going in and exhaust gases are going out at the right time. Okay, damage intake or exhaust valve, and that's kind of equates to the same thing really. And partially blocked fuel injectors. Okay, so that's what we're talking about there. So if any of this is evident within, you know, your bike, this is the reason why it's not going to run properly, it's going to run irregularly, it's going to misfire, all that kind of stuff. A lot of this you can do yourself. You can take out a spark plug, you can look at that. You can, you know, see if it's sparking, you know, connect it up to the cap and just hold it onto the cylinder casing, and then just fire off the starter and see if it sparks. Obviously, you've got to be careful not to get a shock there yourself. But, you know, these are the things that you can do yourself. Make sure that the gap is correct, you know, if you get the settings properly, all that kind of stuff. But these are usually why an engine won't start. It starts, but it's running hard. The engine won't even turn over, or it misfires, or whatever. It's going to be electrical. It's going to be a fuel starvation issue. It's going to be a faulty connector, broken wire, that kind of thing. Very, very rare will it be a mechanical issue. The only mechanical issue that it's likely to be is going to be a valve issue. That's the only reason. And this is basically just take the cylinder head off, and then, you know, you can access all that information there. But obviously, you know, you want to leave that to a dealer or a mechanic, or if you're suitably able to do it yourself, you can do that as well. Right, well, I say a bit of a long video there, but I wanted to just go through, say, some of this troubleshooting, which you can actually kind of diagnose yourself, a lot of it through this the owner's manual. But most critically, you can give this information to a mechanic, to a Harley dealership technician, and then they can, you know, work through the problem as well. They may have to hook up their diagnostics as well to give them a positive indication, or they may be able to just diagnose it there and then. Anyway, I hope this helps. Check out my other videos coming shortly on this troubleshooting for Harley Softails and Sport Glides. And, well, please like, share, subscribe, leave loads of comments below. Check out the website, RevelatorAlf.com. See you again. Bye.